Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Transform Now podcast. I'm Michael Marchuk, your host, and I've got a couple guys here who've been on our podcast before. We got Jeremy Rossi and John Bellone who've been on our podcast and shared some really interesting insights. And with these two guys, I never know what's next, and so you guys are in for a treat. So Jeremy, John, first question I want to start us off today. So everybody's talking about agents and the agentic world and all the stuff that's going along with it. And obviously, SS&C Blue Prism and some of the other entrants in this field have been doing automation for a while, but we've seen a boatload of agentic AI startups just appearing. What are your thoughts on where all that's going to end up and where these startups are going?
Go ahead.
Oh, hand it over to me first. Where do I think the startups are going to go? Listen, I think that like many startups and many industries that are budding, we're kind of at the beginning of what kind of tools and automations and value really they're going to provide to businesses and individuals. Up until now, in my opinion, might be a hot take, but I think there's a lot of value in using language models for organizing your own thoughts and your own personal work, and even making decisions on some very broad topics that you have all the information in front of you, easily accessible. The tools that are going to be successful from these startups and from enterprises are going to be tools that enable language models and any other type of automation that needs to make reasoning decisions to get that data in a format and in front of the engine that does the decision making quickly and in a way that's consistent.
That makes sense.
I'm going to go beat Jeremy. I think that I'll get to the startups first, but I think that whenever I hear agentic and AI and agents, I want to say what people actually care is outcomes. And they're playing, most of the clients or customers or people or startups I'm talking to, but most of the time they really want an outcome. And that's the part that's being lost in the marketing speak, is that that's what they really need. That's what they really want, but they have to say they're using automation and AI to do it. So the agentic is got a technical definition, and then it's got a what people are purchasing definition. And the what people are purchasing definition is actually just an outcome. And they want that outcome. And that means that it doesn't matter if it's deterministic, non-deterministic, AI or non-AI. What they're looking for is improving their outcomes by getting shorter something, faster something, to improve something. So that's the part that I'm seeing happen. But the interesting part is in the startups is there's a completely separate thing happening. Is there's going to be companies that have access to data and there's companies that don't. And in the startup domains, software's value is going down as fast as possible. And the part that's going to differentiate people commoditizing your business is if you have data that you have a moat around that you can keep isolated and controlled. So you're going to see, like, I'm going to use iOS app examples, is you're going to see 2,000 to-do list apps that don't have any real data lockup. They're going to be competing on features, and they're going to be competing in all kinds of new agentic and innovative ways, but the cost of switching is going to be relatively low. There's no going to be moat, and you're going to be competing with the next great idea from software engineer that's using AI to get to market fast. And then there's going to be 2 email apps that will never get displaced. They're going to be Outlook and Gmail because they have your data, and moving is nearly impossible. And you'll have some people playing on the edges, but you can't. And I think that model is going to show up everywhere, is that the people that can hold the data and hold it and provide services will control those worlds relatively tightly, and they will not be assaulted much, except for features such which those big companies can add to. It just takes them longer to do, but they're not in fear of them, those startup softwares, because they're competing at the minimum where they don't have data, where they're being displaced every 2 years by upgrade cycles. And so that's where I'm seeing there's that answering that question. AI has changed the ability to deliver software faster. So you're going to see more competition in the market generally, but you're going to see more of a consolidation around data in the big players and for the enterprise market. And that's how I see these startups going.
Well, so just continue on this one a little bit further. I've seen stories about ridiculous valuations for companies that either A, don't have a product yet, or B, are made up of like 3 people who have had some really great success in the past. What are your thoughts on that?
So, I don't think that's, first off, I don't think that's anything necessarily new for VCs and valuations in general, regarding, early stage, especially if it's going through like a incubator that's, there's several that tend to get large valuations. Now, I think the difference is the speed at which maybe they can produce a proof of concept, proof of value, and put that in front of people to get the feedback loop faster. One of the things I think that illustrates at least my thoughts about what we're going to see, and I guess the question is, does it outpace the problems it might cause? Is I read a article about a week ago that was explaining, I think it was Andrew Yang, mentioned that they're seeing that a lot of the work that's done by first and second year law associates is being displaced by large language models, right? And the thing that I know a lot of lawyers, the things that always makes me interested when these kind of comments are made is they're probably true, but you don't get third year law associates without having a first and a second year.
Yes.
Right.
And what happens when that third year goes to a fourth year, et cetera, and now you don't have the bench of people that learned? You're changing basically what those incoming people are doing now. Now, do you see less lawyers going to law school? Probably over time. But what are they going to now do when they're entry levels? And I think it's going to be very similar in the software development world. And it'll be interesting to see, does the tooling and how good it can get outpace, like, for lack of a better term, the brain drain we could potentially see in many industries.
I think I actually think the software industry actually completely is the proof of what you're just saying, is that the best people in the AI development world have the architecture knowledge, the assembly knowledge. They are 20 years of experience of building software, exploring infrastructure, deploying things at scale, because while they prompt and work through and iterate problems, they know how to communicate it effectively. They know how to design it effectively. They know how to break the problem down effectively. They know what components are reproducible and lead to the best results given the problem domain. And the way you get those is 20 years of mistakes and hard learnings. And I don't know how that happens in the AI assisted world. The entire, like, that's the part that I'm a little worried about. And I have a model that I want to push towards, which is we need less choice in order to continue down this path. We need to remove more choice from infrastructure. We need to remove, like, how do I get less choice in the architecture decisions so that I can make more headway in software development for cheaper in those regards? And this is the balance that we haven't figured out yet, but I think it's going to play. I just don't know how that works in legal. I don't know how it works in some other ones where that experience also comes from exposure, confidence building, where interpersonal relationships. Software, I've found a way I think I can get out of it. I don't know how to do that in legal. I don't know how to do that in some of the business domains. So I'm more worried now in those domains than I am in the software development domains, because I can remove so much choice in the software development to get to create more of a velocity to do that. But I don't know how to do that in legal. I don't know how to do that in HR. I don't know how to do that in these other domains.
Yeah, so I think to your point, we've seen that in the past. I mean, there are how many different countless versions of CPU architectures that people could write to and build on, and x86 probably wasn't the best. I'm sure there's
definitely was not.
But it was the most pervasive, and so that's what we have a lot of, right? Because there wasn't much choice, and what we had was like with Apple phones. Not that there's anything wrong with Apple phones or the x86 architecture. The reality is, because of the volume, there's a platform that people will then use to leverage and then build upon, whether it's a good or bad.
Yeah, networking effect.
Yes, and building that foundation piece is probably the most difficult part. And I think that's probably where we're in a lot right now is where's the foundation going to settle? I think your dog has a response for that one. So anyway, so I based on all these things, we've got all these startups going and whatnot, but there's also a whole lot of organizations who are looking at agents going, golly gee, we need to get some of that stuff in our organization. And you know as well as I do, everyone's dabbling with something, right? Whatever it is. But what's holding these organizations back from adopting AI agents at scale?
What's holding them back? So I think the first thing what's holding them back is they need this is a new realm for them, and I'll lean back on, I think I wasn't around when it happened, but the Industrial Revolution, right? It takes time for people to realize like what it actually is about, right? It's about efficiencies. It's about making it so that you can use the human knowledge, the human capital that you have in your organization more effectively. And I often see with a lot of these, I don't want to say startups, but like applications that one or two people might have built that don't really have a business, but they have a solution that they work pretty well for a single solution. But when you actually sit down and try to scale them, they're generally like very one dimensional. They do one thing really, really well. And to Jeremy's point, you might see 50 of them if it's about like how many automated to do apps you can make and integrate, right? I think the hardest thing is you're going to see specific industries start to figure out how to leverage the AI to make it more to make their work to make their day-to-day work more effective, and we're still in the beginning of that, right? I can tell you right now, my work day is not as efficient as it could be. I don't use AI as much as I probably could be using it.
I say that just saying AI agents isn't going to be the right thing. I think you start with automation, and if you don't have an automation program, you can't start with AI agents. Not because I think they are actually important, but the models and the mental model of connecting and getting to outcomes, automation is the base by which you want to stand on. And that means use new tools, old tools, whatever it is. Once you start down that automation, AI agents just become a velocity to solve new problems within it. And that's probably some of the biggest problems I'm seeing with getting people to onboard is if they think they're going to skip the automation, go straight to AI, it's not going to work. The technologies aren't there. The way to move data around isn't there. You need the foundation to do all this stuff. And AI agents. The other one is what's the outcome you need? Not the technology. What are and break it down and be willing to say, like, if I get 10% better in this one area, and it could be just a script, it could be a bot, it could be an API call into a different service. Starting there, realizing the benefits of the automation and then improving it and then sticking with it. Because then you'll eventually get to the point where like, oh, okay, an AI agent is the only best way for bang for buck and dollar to get that next. So I've got these 6 automations together and bam, now I can bring them together in a new way with AI. But it's always got to be connected to an outcome.
Gotcha. I like to see it as a definite theme is I'm hearing from you is it's all about the outcomes, not necessarily about the technology. And as you mentioned, the technology piece is only one component of it. And I mean, you've been along long enough that technology is going to continually change, right? There's going to be one platform, then there's going to be the next best platform, then another best platform is going to unsee the other one. But the mindset behind it is really what's most important, because if you're not able to have a mindset to adopt even the first one, getting to a bester platform as the third and fourth generations arrive, if you're not ready to handle that, it doesn't really make a difference. So adopting AI agents as the first choice still requires you to do a lot more thought process work that you would have done to taking on even somebody like an RPA or some other automation technology before that.
Yeah, and I'm going to put a little bit of the vision thing I have behind this is that the where I see AI really changing the dynamics is actually not in the automation in getting work done. It's changing the dynamics of how people work with the technology. So nothing, the part that I think is going to change the fastest is being able to expose more technology to executives, to business teams in ways that they can use and understand without having a translation layer of a technologist. And so like one of the things I talk about constantly is business intelligence doesn't know it's dead, but it's dead. That whole paradigm of creating dashboards and putting things in front and having a technology team understand the data, that is going to die. I don't know when, but it will, because the much better is to ask and talk and have the person describe what they need and iterate on it. Iterate on it in near real time against a backend data source, because that's how you get to, oh, I now understand. I now getting the data I need to see. I know how to translate into action, rather than the old way, which is I describe what I not to a team. They go take it back to a technologist who misinterprets it, not because he's wrong, because he speaks a slightly different language, and then tries it. And the report goes back and forth 2 or 3 times, and it's about a month later. And then finally you get to something actionable. And even in the fastest case, that's 5 days, not a month. Imagine being able to do it in real time, because we removed the translation layer, because the LLM can talk business to business people. You can talk technology to technology people. And if you supply it with the right data, we're going to take out that world. And it's going to be kind of cool.
So, got a question along those lines. So, because work is changing and these LLMs are able to bring in this new way of interacting with the data and the kind of the review of the data that we already have in these giant repositories across all our organizations, um, and I'm using the collective we, from a long time ago, we got this great tool called Excel, right? And I'm pretty sure nearly every organization in the world runs 80% of their business off of Excel somehow, or in the back end of it all. Um, with Microsoft dominating all these Office apps and whatever, how do you see that changing when you bring agents into the new way of working?
John, I'm going to let you go first, because I got a real hot take on this.
Excel's a hard one because it is just so amazing. But I think that I don't think the problem itself is Excel. I think it's how Excel is how workbooks are shared and managed, and how the data itself is managed. Because right now the data just lives in the most Excel workbooks. Um, where I think it's going is that I think there'll be tools that gives that same type of experience on top of Excel workbooks, databases. To Jeremy, what Jeremy said a few minutes ago, business intelligence tools or data sources that existed before. I don't think we're getting rid of Excel anytime soon, because the honest truth is that's how people think, right? Like, it's an easy way for people to structure their information. It's an easy way to consume that information. I think the problems that we tend to run in with Excel, maybe that's a hot take of mine, are pretty well solved if you use Microsoft 365 and you share your workbook and you permission it correctly. The problems with Excel that aren't solved are when you want to use that data to automate processes. And if you could take a workbook and build agentic workflows around an Excel workbook, the data in an Excel workbook, I think that's a pretty good product. And I haven't seen anything that Microsoft has produced yet, but I'm sure it's on their radar.
All right,
Likely.
Jeremy's hot take. For the first time ever, Microsoft Office is actually going to be under threat for everything besides Excel.
Okay. All right. Now
Word
you have to
is a
elaborate.
So Word is a dead end technology. You should start write everything in Markdown. It's consumable. It's reproducible. It gets you to the data. Wait, I know. Wait. I know everybody's going to argue with me. That's fine. But the single fact of the matter is, I use Markdown, but it should be a text language. We need something that's consumable by AI. And one of the biggest single problems with the Office tools is they're not. And that's why I think Microsoft, for the first time, is actually going to face some actual trouble.
I'm going to say something that I know is going to trigger Jeremy. something that's near and dear to my heart. It's about 26 years old. XML.
Very different.
They are very different. But just like I know you agree about strongly typed IDLs for writing software, I think having a strongly typed document language would be more useful here. Now, is it useful for every single situation? Absolutely not. I do think, though, that a lot of the principles that are in XML and the adjacent things that XML provide would actually help out large language models a lot.
And so we know that for a fact. In fact, the best way to get the best response out of large language models now is not to talk to them, but it's to talk to them in JSON, which is a pseudo-structured language. I understand that, but that's not the thing. That's the part. It's that manipulation of Markdown. It's manipulation of these tools by AI. Like I keep all my notes. So we have our AI gateway. I use AI gateway with Adder, which is an open source Claude Code competitor. And I use everything in terminal. Everything's in Markdown. Hundreds, around 7,000 Markdown files now for all of my notes. And it is now a unbelievably powerful index database that I turn into Word, I can turn into PowerPoint, I can turn into things. I have taken my knowledge and put it into Markdown, but now by doing that, I've made it accessible to AI for nearly zero cost, zero translation, zero special things. And this is what tells me something is really fundamentally different in this world, is that I can outperform 90% of my colleagues in getting to an answer, finding research, reproducing my things, except for one thing. And so I just did an analysis using Adder, and I still wanted to pull up Excel. But I did it with SQLite locally and instrumenting it that way because I turned it into a bunch of SQLite database and I got to a great business BI level capability output. But that was because I knew enough. I could specify it.
Well,
but
you're
I
using
guarantee you I could not have had somebody else do that because they didn't have the architectural background to be able to put all that data in a table and start describing it often enough to make it impactful. But PowerPoint, kill it with fire. Word, burn it down. Give Markdown.
I think both of those two tools, PowerPoint and Word, be my hot take. I do agree actually with most of what you said. I think that the Office technology suite, specifically Word and PowerPoint, they just become mediums to view the data how you want to view the data, which is really what everyone wants. Like I have a particular way that I like to view investment presentations. I still want all the source data to be the same, every single investor that I look at, but I want to view it in the way that I like to consume it. And I think that those become tools that the individual now drives, but links to data that can hopefully be structured the same way.
That makes sense.
Microsoft released a simple Python tool called Markdown. It's under GitHub, Microsoft/Markdown. You just feed Markdown in doc files that give you Markdown out, and it is a game changer of making things discoverable.
So what you bring up is a good point, and that is, let's go back in time when Word and PowerPoint were in their heyday, and just even when they started. Why did they start? Because we were primarily a paper-based world, right? The rest of the world was reading paper. We'd store all our information on paper. We'd throw it in a file cabinet. And when we shared information with others, we would print it out or we would display it on screen somewhere else in a larger format. So all of that activity is related primarily to paper. And now that we're moving away from sort of the paper-driven world and into this database and AI-driven world, I think that probably drives a lot of why you're saying what you're saying, is because we don't necessarily, we don't necessarily print out Word documents. We read them. We don't print them out. We don't store them in a file cabinet anymore. And so all that data that's contained in there is lost to these individual files, which are no longer discoverable as they could be within a broader, different kind of structure. So I think that's an interesting perspective you brought. So
yeah, I'm full of hot takes. I love having strong opinions.
Well, I'm going to light you up on this one here because I'm sure this is one that you'll probably take with and run with, and I'll probably have to cut you off at some point. What's your take on vibe coding?
Oh, you don't say. I'm going to go first because I want John to do the follow-up. I hate the term vibe coding. I think vibe coding is an absolute mistake. But I think the impact that AI like Claude Code can do to coding is staggeringly good if you use it effectively. I think that you can the better you get at it, the more impactful you are. But we're going to go back to how to think about the problem is the majority of the importance, not the coding method, not writing functions, not prompting, not vibing, not talking to. It's breaking down the work mentally, having a plan to get to an outcome and getting it going. And I've done this a couple times and I'm unbelievably impressed with Claude Code and Adder are the two tools that I'm really impressed with. But they're not going to replace a knowledgeable person directing them. If I'm lazy, then I've done it on purpose. I literally flew back through from London intentionally being vibe code lazy. I produced an ungodly mess of code that kind of worked most of the time, but would create tech debt for 20 years if we ever rolled it out. And then the endpoint side, if I took and I actively participated in coding, vibe chatting, doing the recording text and all that, and I was constantly monitoring and pushing it, it was 1,000 times better code. So the amount of effort going in gets exactly what you get out.
I agree everything Jeremy said. I think that the term is horrible, vibe code. But the tools are actually very, very impressive. What I will say is that I haven't used them as much as I know Jeremy has, but the ones that I have used, generally speaking, it actually makes writing requirements, who would have thought, extremely, extremely important. And I think if anything that comes out of vibe coding, if it's the fact that we're now going to have written requirements that are version controlled, that we can go back and look at for every single software project, feature, functionality that we need to develop, it's worth its weight in gold for that alone. But what I will say is that to kind of end with what Jeremy said, you do need someone that knows how to write software, that knows what's right and what's wrong, and knows the correct patterns. Some of the things, some of the tools do have the ability to define rules and best practices. Those are all the things that you would, as a software architect group, define when you have junior developers working on products. And it uses a lot of the same skills that a senior architect, senior developer would do when they're mentoring new developers. So the skill sets align a lot with people that are been like to earlier on the podcast. We talked about being in a particular field for 20 years. Where I'm interested in seeing how it goes is what happens for those people that are fresh out of college, because you can't, people in the role for 20 years aren't going to want to work, for 40 more years. They might have to, but that's a different.
We just recorded a podcast, John, on our Bites of Wisdom. So I'm going to do a product drops. You should listen to it because we went into more detail of Claude Code and how I use it. And we discussed guardrails, hooks, so all these kind of things. So it's a great kind of intro to that. We went to basically 30 minutes on the last topic you just asked us one question about.
Well, like you said, we only have so much time here, but I really appreciate you guys both joining us. And what I'm getting out of this is two things. One, Jeremy, you mentioned it, I think, a dozen or more times. Outcomes that's the whole point behind all this, is the outcomes, not necessarily the technology. It's the outcomes that we're doing. And then, John, you just brought it up real well, which is we got to think about what we're doing before we just start doing, right? So these are things that folks who may not have the experience are diving into and finding out the hard way, that actually thinking about something and thinking about the outcomes is kind of important before you just start vibing, right? So again, thank you both for joining me today.
Wait.
This was a great session. Yes. Yeah.
Michael, it gotta be me. How do you use AI right now? And what's your favorite thing to do with AI that you think is different than everybody else?
So I use it differently. I come from an outside, from a technology perspective, because From a technology perspective, I'm using it to help refine the way I outline my ideas. So that's one way I use it to be able to create ideas and do it that way. But from a creative standpoint, I am a very creative person, but I have very little talent. So I appreciate art, I appreciate music, but the problem is I can't do any of it. So I've been using AI to help me where I couldn't do things myself. So creating music, creating art,
Nice.
and these are things that I appreciate, and that's how I use AI on a daily basis. Every night I'm goofing off doing something. Okay, what kind of song can I create for this? What kind of music can I? And I'm enjoying that part of how AI works. For my work life, it is all about helping my ideas come to life in a more cohesive way.
Cool. I like to flip it around. You got to ask the host a question.
Yeah.
Too. Otherwise,
Exactly.
Can't just be
it's not
us.
fun.
I'm just a knucklehead. Nobody wants to know what I do.
Oh, that's so interesting. I haven't played with it for music, but that sounds interesting because there's so many. Because I couldn't tell you what a chord is to save my life, but it'd be interesting to see what you would come up with and what you would think about there. That'd be fun.
Yeah.
I might have to try that tonight.
Well, great. Well, again, thank you both for joining us, and stay tuned for another great episode of Transform Now. Till then, have a good one.